Welcome to Pondering Play and Therapy,
where we set out to explore the importance of play in our everyday lives and how this can also be therapeutic. We'll be discussing our own experiences in the hope that others may ponder play in their own lives too.
Welcome to this week's episode of Pondering Play and Therapy with me, Philippa.
And me, Julie. This week's episode is on play and traditions. And we did tussle a little bit over the title of this one. But in saying traditions, what we're thinking about is the concept of something playful being passed down the line within your family or within your friends, something that's passed down the line to you, a tradition, and also the things that you may create with your family, your friends, your colleagues, and pass down the line to others. So in that sense, we're thinking about playful traditions over time, over weeks, over years, over generations. So that's what we're going to be particularly thinking about today. And so we'll think about, first of all, the playful things that have been passed on to each of us from the generations before us. But we'll also then spend time thinking about how within a family, a group of friends, a newly created family, a workplace, we begin to create traditions that give that sense of safety and belonging in the groups that we are in, whether those groups are permanent groups or temporary groups. So that's today's episode, thinking about play and traditions. And this really came out of a conversation that Philippa and I had several weeks ago about dominoes and a cribbage box. Have I got that right, Philippa? Tell us about those in your family.
Absolutely. So we were talking about play and what we do in our families, weren't we? Which is that traditions. And I suppose I was talking about my grandparents and their generation. So my granddad, where I always played cribbage with them. It's the only people I've ever played cribbage with. I don't know that I could play it now, but I just remember it was like 15-1, 15-2, 15-3. But my dad, when he was a child, had made my granddad and gran a cribbage board, which is just a wooden block with little holes in that you count. When you say 15-1, 15-2, you move count these sticks along in little holes along this board. And when my granddad passed, that's what I had, was this cribbage board that my dad had made, and the little counters, which are actually matchsticks and cocktail skewer things that you put a cherry or put in a cocktail, and those are the things that are in there. And my granddad's uncle, so my Uncle Norman, he used to live near to a school that I did my YTS. People won't know what a YTS is now, but it was a youth training scheme when I was 16. He used to live a few doors down from there, and 2 days a week on my lunchtime, I used to go and play dominoes with him, have my lunch and play dominoes. And I had from his house his domino box, and they are ivory dominoes, which I know is really awful and you wouldn't want to have ivory, but they are treasured because they came from him. And the other thing that we played with my nana was, I think it's called, the actual name of it is called Newmarket. It's a card game, but we used to call it a penny in and a penny out. And you have a saucer with a card underneath, and it's a gambling game. But I remember that when we were kids, the only time I ever played it was on Boxing Day at my Auntie Florrie's house, when all the family went and sat in her front parlour, but it was just the front room of a terraced house, but she used to call it the parlour. And there must have been, I don't know, it felt like hundreds of people when I was a child, but probably about 30 people of all generations. We were the youngest generation, but went right through 3 and 4 generations. And they'd put all the coffee tables, all the tables together in this parlour, and we'd all sit around it, and there'd be a saucer in the middle with a card underneath. And there must have been loads of packs of cards, and then you just follow. So somebody put the ace of hearts down, and then you put the 2 of hearts down, and somebody put the 3 of hearts down. And if you were out first, you got the money on the outside, which was the penny out. And if you'd played the jack of the card that was underneath the saucer, you got the penny in. So the penny out was always won, but sometimes the penny in wasn't won because the jack wasn't played. So that could build up in pennies, and you'd get as a kid, you'd get like £1 worth of pennies or something like that. And those, I think, are from my grandparents. Those are really wonderful memories for me. They're playing penny in, penny out, Newmarket, whatever you want to call it. No, it really fills my body with joy, and thinking about cribbage and dominoes with my Uncle Norman and my granddad. Those were times of really important connection and really great memories that I have of my family. And sometimes it was when my granddad, he'd got Parkinson's and was quite poorly towards the end of his life, but he could still play cribbage or crib, and we would still be able to do that 2 or 3 times a week. Even when he was in hospital, we could still play cards, and that was a really important way that I connected with him and heard his stories about life and things like that. So yeah, those are really precious memories and items for me. What about for you, Julie?
Just thinking about hearing you talk about that, and listeners won't be able to see Philippa's face at the moment, but you're absolutely beaming while you tell those stories. It's like you've gone into a different place. You're reminiscing, but it's more than reminiscing. It's very present. These people have all died. They've all passed on. They're no longer physically in your life, but in your reciting those memories, you've become very alive, and it's almost as though they have also become very alive in the room. I've never met your Aunt Florrie, but I have a picture now in my head of her front parlour with all these card tables and the saucers. So there's something about who you are that's been formed by these traditions, even though those traditions are no longer happening with the people that they first happened with for you. And we don't know the stories of who they first played cribbage with and penny in, penny out. Where did that come from? It's that sort of play heritage that you and I know that we have, but we're very aware that many people don't have that. And so later on in this episode, that's why it's so important to think about how each of us may create play traditions with the people in our lives, even if we haven't inherited something. So as you were talking, I was thinking, gosh, what do I have object-wise? And I've recently been clearing out my parents' house along with several of my siblings, and that's brought a lot of laughter, a lot of oh my goodness, why did we ever have that? And what was that used for? Okay, we need to get rid of that. So there's been a lot of clearing out. And I actually have to say there are lots of packs of cards, but no other games that I've come across. Oh, there was the Scrabble board. So I'm hoping one of my nieces may take the Scrabble board. But I think for me, when I think about playfulness as a tradition within my family, it would certainly be card games with one of my nanas. We lived in a different country to our grandparents, so wouldn't see them very often. But the game of Rummy, which I'm sure many people know, is the only card game I know off by heart because I learnt it very early on. And it's a game that's been passed on to nieces and nephews. We can all play Rummy without having to think about the rules. And so I have saved several of the packs of cards They don't particularly have a significance because I don't remember them as this was the pack of cards we always played with. But it's the fact that it's a couple of packs of cards from my parents' house that we're likely to have played Rummy with. And they're not full-size cards. My nana particularly liked playing with the smaller version of the cards. They're about, I don't know, 1.5 by 2.5 inches. They're much smaller, partly because she also liked playing solitaire, playing games on her own. And they would fit on one of those little trays that you could have, on the wheels above your chair. So she would sit for hours playing solitaire, but with small packs of cards. So I was thinking about card games. I'm thinking about playing drafts. I never really got the hang of chess, so thinking about board games, which were often associated with a bit of stress for me as well, because actually I think I wasn't very good at them. I wasn't good at thinking ahead. And if I did play them, then I would often lose, and I would find that quite tricky. So when I think about playing board games as traditions in my family, I don't always see that as something that I found helpful or enjoyable as a child. That's come much more as an adult. I've found the games that I really enjoy and I've found people to play them with. But as I've said before in other episodes, I think singing was a thing that, we've just begun to do as a family. My mum seemed to sing a lot. She would sing things like, "The sun has got his hat on," to get us up in the morning. She would sing while she vacuumed the house. She would sing while she was wallpapering. She had a song for everything. And I think I've just picked that up. And with some of my family, that's what we still like to do, is just have a sing-along. Just somebody sit round the piano, somebody start a daft song. So the things that we've inherited, and both of us happen to have been in families where we have inherited some playful ways. But one of the things we wanted to think about today then is what can be created playfully within families, groups of friends, groups of colleagues, that then becomes the tradition. It becomes the thing that we do when we're together. And just before we came on, you talked about the tango and the foxtrot. Tell us about the tango and the foxtrot, because I found this really helpful and I've scribbled it down because I want to remember it.
I suppose it's thinking about, why are those traditions important? Why do we need them? And I suppose it's to belong, it's to connect, it's to be part of something bigger than us that says, this is our clan, this is our family, this is our people, this is our tribe, however you want to say. But this is where I belong, and I am part of this belonging group. And we have these traditions, and these feel safe and secure for me. And those people at my Aunt Florrie's, who I didn't see from one year to the next, we could sit down and play penny in, penny out, and everybody knew, like your game of Rummy, everybody knew what to do, where they were going to sit, what was going to happen, whether you were 4 years old or 84 years old. There was a connection that engulfed it all through that tradition of playing penny in, penny out. So when we blend families, whether that's a foster family, whether that's families coming together where they've got step families, I suppose is what they're called, aren't they? Where we maybe haven't always grown up from a tiny baby and just inbuilt those traditions inside us. We come with different experiences, different traditions, different things that have happened to us. And when I worked with foster families, I used to think with them about actually your family does the tango and you do the tango really great and you all know the steps. And now you've got this child, this teenager coming in, or several and coming into your family, but they dance the foxtrot. And that's a very different dance. And how do you get together? So you can teach them the tango. And that's okay. You can teach them the tango and help them to learn the steps, but it's not ingrained inside them. They are coming from the outside in, and that's okay. All right. And you can learn the foxtrot, but again, you're coming from the outside in. But maybe if you can combine the two or add a bit of the foxtrot into the tango or a bit of the tango into the foxtrot, where you can create something together, then I think that's much more powerful because that's something that you create as this new group of people, a family, a cohort, whatever it is you're doing. You're now developing your own tradition, your own kind of sense of belonging from your original tradition. So it's not about saying these aren't important. I guess it's like when you have an adult relationship, whether you get married, whether you live with somebody, whether you've got a group of friends, you all come with experiences and you hopefully blend your dance, you blend your foxtrot and your tango to create something that is meaningful, that you all know the steps of together. Yeah.
So a sense that rather than a child, say a child, for instance, coming into a foster family, into an adoptive family, feeling that perhaps they will never belong because they don't know the traditions of this family. They haven't been in this family since they were born. They haven't grown into those family traditions, which could create a sense of exclusion and a sense of, I never quite fit, I never quite belong. And as you said, there is opportunity to learn that tango and for the parents to learn that foxtrot. But ultimately, the strength in that family or that new group of friends is to create something that is new and unique and about the now and who we are now, and creating those playful traditions with the people who have come together, perhaps later in life, and haven't come from the same traditions. How important it is, yes, to teach one another our own traditions, but to be very consciously creating new play traditions within that new group. And I'm thinking here about friendships. I've just come back from a little bit of a road trip with a very good friend who has a camper van. And I've known this friend for a good 30 years or so. And we had a road trip to Ireland. We both have heritage in Ireland. And we were visiting cousins, uncles, neighbours, people that have been part of our lives for a long time. But what we have, just the two of us, is our own road trip traditions. So this friend, camper van, 2 dogs, me up the front, is not great on windy roads, and she's also not great going downhill. So we often have a bit of a tail behind us. And it's become our game over the 30 years or so, is saying probably time to pull into a lay-by or pull in to a side road and let the queue go past. And then we guess how many cars there are going to be in the queue. And then the winner is the person who's guessed close to the 5, 10, 15. I think our record is 30 odd going past. And it's just a thing we do. The other game we play is tapping out a tune on the dashboard. Just tap, tap, tap a tune. The other person has to guess what it is. We've just created these ways of being on long road trips together. And we don't have to say, oh, when we go on that road trip, we are going to play this. We just know at some point one of us is going to say, what's this tune then? And we'll start tapping. And that's not neither of those games are things that have come from my family or from other people, but they're unique to that relationship. I don't play them in other people's cars. I don't play them on other long journeys. I only play them with that friend. And it's something very warm and connecting for me and her. And until we're old ladies, we'll probably be playing those games.
Yeah. And I think that when you create new families, when you have your own children, you have some of the traditions that come down from your parents, your grandparents, but you also create new ones, don't you? I think lots of families do. In ours, it's just something simple like a Colin the Caterpillar cake. Everybody has that on their birthday, and whoever his birthday is gets the choice of whether they want the face at the front. And my nieces, when they were little, my sister-in-law had these beautiful cakes made. They were absolutely beautiful. All of whatever theme they were into when they were toddlers. And when my oldest niece got to, I don't know, about 6, she was like, why am I having that cake? I want the Colin the Caterpillar cake.
You might need to explain a Colin the...
So Colin the
cakes are available.
Yeah, they are. I think Aldi and everyone do their own versions now. It's just a very simple Swiss roll covered in chocolate with a white chocolate caterpillar face on the front and white chocolate feet. It's very simple. It's about £9 compared to these really elaborate, beautiful cakes that my niece was having that were like 60, 70, 80 quid's worth, because they were well worth it. They were amazing. But actually, what she'd seen was that everybody else in the family has a Colin the Caterpillar cake, because that's what my child wanted when they were babies and toddlers. Yeah, so it was like, so now even they have Colin the Caterpillar. And my sister-in-law was like, that's fine. It's going to save me like 60 quid. I don't need to be doing that anymore. But that is a tradition that now everybody, and even if you didn't have it, you felt like you missed out. So, and so that is something that is passed on. I remember then my son getting to about, I don't know, 13 and saying, I don't even like chocolate. It was just at that age. They're hitting those teenage years and all that brain, and they're trying to find their clan outside of their family. They're trying to find their people. And so they were like, I don't like chocolate. Why are you buying me this? I want a sponge cake. I want this. There was a rejection of this tradition as we hit these teenage years. So everybody else is having a Colin the Caterpillar cake, and my child is having a Victoria sponge or whatever it was they decided that they wanted through these first few years of the teenage years. We're now back to Colin the Caterpillar cake, but there was a rejection of, I don't want that. And I think that when we've got these traditions, whether it's in families, blended families, foster families, it gives a sense of predictability. It gives a sense of security. It gives a sense of, this is what my family is about and I belong within this. But it also allows for a rejection of something in a safe way, so we can go and explore something different in those times of teenage, early 20s, where we should be trying to find traditions. We should be trying to find our people. That is what we are designed to do at those points of time. I suppose what we did in our family is we kept the tradition going. For my child, we respected their wish of, we don't want a Colin the Caterpillar cake. We want a sponge cake because I don't like chocolate, which really wasn't true, but that was just the point of where we were at that point. But there was an allowance for them to reject the tradition, but the tradition still held. But there was a respecting of their wishes, their viewpoints at that time, their thoughts of, I need to go and find something for myself. And hopefully we come back to those things, don't we? Or we don't. We find something different and we find a new tradition. As it goes, my person came back to it, and that was great. But it was okay if they hadn't done, if they'd always stuck with what I want is a Victoria's sandwich or an elaborate cake or whatever it is. Yeah.
So as you're speaking, that's reminding me of that, what's sometimes called the circle of security or the attachment circle, which we think about very much with toddlers. That sense of, I have my secure base, I have the people I know and understand, the people I feel secure with, safe with. And because I've got that, I can go off out into the world, which for a 2-year-old is get off dad's knee and go to the other side of the room and go and play with potentially a new person at the playgroup. That's the element of exploration for a 2-year-old. But I can get off my parents' secure knee. I can go off and explore and meet new things, meet new people, meet new experiences, but always knowing that I can come back to the familiar and the secure. And that same pattern seems to happen again in adolescence. That sense of, I have my secure base, but I can go off and explore. And with it comes rejection, comes a sense of disdain for the secure base. But ultimately it's still there. And that exploration is much, much wider. It's way beyond the house. It's way beyond school. It's out into very unfamiliar settings that the parents, the carers won't know all the details about. But the child, the young person, the adolescent knows that safety is ultimately still there.
Absolutely. Dan, sorry, Julie, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I was going to say, Dan Siegel talks about this. Put a link into a YouTube video that's free and available. And he talks about this need for the adolescent to go and explore, to go and find their own people, because we are eventually not going to be available for them, do they? And if they're on their own, then actually that survival it is dependent on having your clan, your peers, your people around you. So actually in adolescence, it is about moving away from us as their parents, their older adults, the ones that have kept them safe up until this point, to finding these new group of peers or people that are going to take them into their future. And for them, they then need to develop their own traditions with those, what they do there outside of their family, don't they? But their family still, like you said, needs to be that secure base whilst they do that. And there needs to be this extending of their attachment connection. It needs to be pulled really far so that you are still there. You're still that person that says it's okay, you're safe. If anything happens, I've got your back. But yeah, you can go out and explore and find other ways of having birthdays, other ways of being on a Sunday morning, or whatever it is that they are doing, that there's a difference for them. And with that, I guess, comes lots of risk. And some of that risk is really important to take. And some of it, for some people, will be a little bit too much. For others, they'll weigh it up quite just right. But that is part of being and finding your new clan and your new traditions while still having an anchor in where we are now. So that allows us to then become the adults we are and cherish the traditions of our family. But we've still got new traditions with our new family and with our new friends. And it's all interconnected, isn't it, in many ways?
Yeah, and that sense of being able to contribute. So I might have, as you and I have done, we've both grown up in our families of origin with the people who gave birth to us. We grew up in our birth families, And to what extent were we able to contribute to traditions when we were growing up? Probably not. I'm thinking probably not very much. I went along with what was offered and what was already established in the family. But that capacity as we get older, as we move through adolescence, as we go out into the world beyond our families, or if we are moving into a family that isn't our birth family and creating a new family through design, then there's the opportunity to feel that we belong through contributing to develop a new tradition, a new way of playing, a new way of being together, and the strength that can come from having your idea taken up and used and other people wanting to repeat your idea. So that sense of when you meet somebody again, or if you're in the same family, meet the next time that event comes up and somebody say, "Oh, Julie, remember that thing we did last year? That was really great. Should we do that again?" That huge sense of belonging and being able to contribute to being valued. That what I offered last year is remembered, and is remembered with a smile and with a sense of connection and the desire to repeat it. So I'm thinking about, I became an aunt quite young. I was still at school when I became an auntie, and developing traditions with my nieces and nephews. And some of them I've seen very often, some of them I don't see so often. But some of the things that I introduced, like just the child lying on their front or curled up in a little ball, and it's making me smile even thinking about it. I pretend that their back is a piece of paper, or I have to rub out the piece of paper. So I give them a good old massage. And then the bit they all squirm at but love is I tickle them under their oxters with my finger, the oxters, your armpits. I'm sharpening my pencil. And then I'd ask them, do you want a letter or a number? And then if it's a letter, how many letters? And that when they were 2, 3, 4, it really was, I think it was just shapes when they were very little. But by the time they were 6 or 7, a 3-letter word. And then I'd create that 3-letter word on their back. And I was always completely amazed that they knew what it was. They couldn't see what I was doing, but they could feel it. Or they wanted a 5-digit number by the time they're 11, 5-digit number. And then I'd have to remember what it was I'd drawn on their back. Now, most of those young people are grown-ups now. But even now, 1 or 2 of them will just, if it's on the sofa, just curl up. And I'll say, "Oh," I rub out the paper. And there's just this sort of lovely smile that goes on. So that's a tradition that we've created just between me and my nieces and nephews. It's not something that came from the wider family, but the joy that gives me to be able to contribute something and to have it invited again and again is just lovely. And that becomes then an understanding, a connection with that person and me. That isn't something that anybody else in my family does with them, as far as I know. So that sort of forever hopefulness of being able to create tradition, give it a go, try out something, and some of it will fall absolutely flat. The child, the young person will just walk away and go, "Oh, don't do that, that's horrible." You think, "Oh, okay, you got that wrong." But every now and again, just finding something that has potential to become a tradition in that group. I don't think it can be planned. I don't think it can be measured. I haven't got much of this out of a book. It's just emerged. Probably somebody has written these things down in a book. I don't know. But just giving it a go and seeing what happens and just keeping your ear to the ground is, I wonder if this might become a little bit of a tradition in our group.
Yeah.
I don't know if that rings any bells with you.
Yeah, absolutely. But what it made me start to think about was that traditions can build connection, it can bring people in, it can help us to feel part of a group. But they it can also be rejecting. It can also help you feel on the outside of a group. It can also make you feel like you don't belong in somewhere because you don't know the traditions, you don't know what they're doing, that and nobody wants to include you in them, and that can be quite harmful and hurtful. I think about school and groups, and even mothers and toddlers groups, and groups that you training groups where you attend, and people already all know one another and they know what's going on and they know what's going to be done and how it's going to be done, and you don't, and nobody tells you, oh, actually, what we do now is this, or this is what happens, or this is how we interact, or this is this song, or this is, and you are just watching, and that can really make you feel like an outsider. Or when you approach, people stop talking or stop doing what they're doing. And you can literally see that they're not including you in something. And that in itself can be really hurtful and harmful. And maybe if, as an adult, for me, I would just think, oh, whatever it is. I was really trying not to swear there, Julie, and walk
I appreciate that.
and walk away. But as a teenager, you don't. I think that, and as a young adult, I think those can be really hard. For me, I was very sporty at school, so I was always in a group because I did sports, and that just led me to being in an inclusive group. And I was pretty good at swimming. I was pretty good at rounders and netball and those sorts of things. So I was part of a group that really I didn't need to kind of find a way into. It just happened because I was good at what I did, and so therefore I was included. I moved schools when I was 14, and so for the last 2 years, and it was a school that didn't do sports. And I really struggled because I didn't know another way of being. I could connect with people. I knew the traditions of a swimming team or of a netball team. I knew what you did. And to be part of that group was really part of my identity. I was good at those things. And I did academia because that gave me access to sport. Because you had to attend class and achieve in order to be able to do the sports, because obviously you had to leave lessons. When I went to this new school, there was no sports, there was no group I was involved in. There was these cool kids who really weren't very pleasant, and that's because they'd got their own groups that kept you together. So eventually I just didn't go to school. I just didn't go to school because I just didn't know, I didn't fit anywhere. I didn't have any connection with anybody. Yeah, all the people that I had connection with had gone because I'd moved to the other side of the city. And yeah, I just didn't go to school because I didn't have anything to connect with. I was on the outside of all these groups. Yeah.
So the importance of, we've talked about this before, about the word play in English, the way we use it in our language. We play sport, we play music, but it's more than the rules. It's about being with other people. It involves at least one other person. It involves a connection. It involves keeping to the rules that have been established for that particular game, but also being creative within that and having a sense of belonging, but also being myself within that. And you really lost that at that age.
Yeah, and I think I was 14, but that sense of identity, I knew I was good at it. I wasn't the best. There was people that were much better at all the sports than me, but I was good enough to make the teams. And that gave me some privilege within the school. I could miss some lessons to go and practice. We were lucky enough in that school that there was a swimming pool on site. So at lunchtime, I could go and swim at lunchtime. So anything that was maybe a little bit more tricky, that if there was going to be clashes at school or bullying us, I could opt out. I had got a way of getting out of that. I could go and swim in the swimming pool. I could go and have hockey practice. That's what I did after school. My whole identity was around sport, and that's where I belonged. And I knew what I was doing. I knew that this was how you got ready. This was how you got on the coach. This was how you shouted and supported people. Mr. Cook, I still remember him. He was in my middle school, actually, not my high school. I was a swimmer there. And he was just the most amazing teacher. And he used to call me Rent-A-Gob because I used to shout so loud. But I knew that was my job in that
You always said family.
Yeah, and there was a family. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And then I went to another school and there was all gone. There was no Mr. Cook. There was no swimming team. There was nothing that I belonged in. I didn't have these connections or anything like that. It was just horrendous. And my world fell apart for quite a long time.
Because you didn't have that place where you felt you belonged, you were playing sport, but again, you knew the rituals and the traditions of how those teams and those groups worked at your school and in your county and all the meets that you had. And I'm thinking I had that not so much with sport, but with music. I knew what to do in an orchestra. I knew what to do in a choir. I knew how to, as you said, get on the coach, go to a festival, go and play in a concert. I knew the rituals of what to wear. And we were playing. We call it playing. I did drama as well at school. And I loved that. I loved being able to act, to play another character. And interestingly, Philippa, you and I haven't shared this before, I also swapped schools at 14, but the opposite way to you. I swapped at my school that I was at, couldn't offer music and couldn't offer drama. So I swapped schools at 14 in order to be at a school that offered music and offered drama, offered the two things of play that I already knew I wanted to do. So for me at that age, that was a wonderful shift because suddenly I was in a school that allowed us time off to go and practice for the school concert, go for a festival, go to the theatre. And that concept of playing with others was huge. It allowed me to make friends very quickly. Within a few weeks, I'd found a group of friends because they're the ones who played music. They were the ones who wanted to sing. They were the ones who wanted to act. And I had no problems, if that's not the right word, but I didn't have a difficulty finding friends when I was 15, 16, 17, because I'd found a common thing to play with others through music. So it's interesting. These are 2 new episodes. I know we're coming to the end for today, probably, but 2 other episodes might be about play and sport and play and music. And where those topics might take us for another day.
Yeah, I just want you to just link those really and think about children that are moved. We talked about moving school. So for me, it was a disaster, really. It was just, I don't regret it. I did have friends outside of school and I had a really nice life, really. I just didn't go to school. And it took me a longer way round to reach academia, but that gave me a lot of life experience. So it was the right thing for me at that time. But at that time, it was quite tricky. I guess for you, it was the opposite way, is that you found your people. And I suppose what it was making me think about was children who move homes, whether that's into foster families, whether that's into adoption, whether that's into residential services, whether that's because parents separate and then they maybe have new step parents or siblings, they become blended families. And I wonder if sometimes their experience is like yours, Julie, where it feels like they fit and the play and the connection is really for them, and it feels like these are my people and this is where I belong. But I also wonder on the opposite of that, about the impact of leaving something that is so familiar, whether that it might be that it's chaos and violence but it's still familiar. Those are still the traditions that you have in your family, and you may be moving to a family where all your needs are met and you go to school on time and you've got nice clothes and you've got board games and all the things that as adults we perceive children to be needing. But as a child, what's that like? You know how you belong in one family, and these adults are saying this is not an okay family to you, but those are all your traditions. Those are all the play might not be the kind of play that as adults we think children should be engaging in, but it's the only play that they've known. It's the only way of being that they know how to be. And now we put them in the family that we say, this is going to be much better for you. This is what life should look like. But actually, you just don't know what to do, because when I moved schools, my parents moved me schools because they thought the school I was going to was academically much better, was going to help me. And they were right. Academically, it was more academically driven and the attainment of that school was greater. But for me, it was absolutely the worst thing, because my links were with the sport and the family there that this school didn't offer. And somebody else as an adult made those decisions for me for the right reasons, in the right context, but without really knowing what it was going to feel like. And I think that that often happens with children who are moved out of their family of origin, or maybe, like I say, within blended families, or have to go and live with grandparents or extended families. It's probably for the very right reasons and done in a very caring way. But what does that feel like for that child?
Yeah, but the loss of familiarity, the loss of sense of belonging, the loss of playfulness in ways that, within the chaos or within the neglect or within the things that were not going well for that child, there would have been some good enough. Even if that hasn't been from the parents, that could have been with a neighbour. It could have been with a grandparent, an auntie, a cousin. There will be playful traditions that will have already built up in 2, 3, 4 years for that child. And then that suddenly all is taken away.
And even the good enough is not taken away, because if you don't know anything else and that's all you know, then you develop in that way that you have those things, that this becomes your normal, your everyday, this is what your life is like. And you feel safe and connected in that, in a way, even when you're unsafe. And it can feel unsafe being safe. And I think that's probably a whole. We have talked about play.
We have talked. We have one of the earlier episodes is about play and safety and feeling unsafe while playing. Listeners can go back and look at one of those earlier episodes. But that's probably a place to pause for today. Thinking about play and traditions over time. And another episode, we'll think more about the small rituals that might happen within a day, within a week, within everyday life, the way playfulness might come into daily rituals. So we know traditions and rituals are very similar words and may have similar meanings for listeners. But today we've talked particularly about traditions over time. And another time we'll get to play those smaller rituals. But for today, we're going to pause.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you've enjoyed it, then please hit subscribe, and we'll hopefully see you in the next podcast.